This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its running right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Senator Charles J. Colgan. Senator Chuck Colgan, as you're known here around the Capitol.
Yes.
Very much appreciate your being on. We're having this conversation here in the fall of 2015 as you are completing 40 years of service in the Senate of Virginia.
Yes.
But even prior to that, you served in local government in Prince William County.
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
What was it, Senator Colgan, that helped you decide that you wanted to run for Board of Supervisors?
I didn't really think about it much. I was moved to Prince William County back in 1964, and I lived there a couple of years, and I went there to manage the new Manassas Airport at that time, and worked there in that job a couple of years, and I noticed that no one seemed to really know where the airport was. And if I was going to make a success of that business, I better do something about it. So I joined the Chamber of Commerce. And then what I began to, as soon as I had the Chamber of Commerce, I was the airport manager, was now a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber is a great organization. And so I attended the meetings regular, and the first thing you know, in about two years, I was president of the Chamber. And so then shortly after that period came to a close. We were sitting around with the board of directors having a meeting one day, and we had wrapped up the meeting, as a matter of fact, just began talking about the board of supervisors and who could we get to run for the board and who could we get to run for some other office. And so the newspaper editor happened to be present, and someone said, "What about you, Chuck? How about why don't you run?" I said, "I can't. I don't have time. I'm too busy at the airport. I can't do that." I said, "Oh, yeah, I think you ought to." Well, the newspaper gentleman who was present, next day I had a little squib in the newspaper, said, "Colgan urged to run for county board." I was amazed at the reaction that I got. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, and I was walking to Giant Food, and somebody came over, "Hey, do it." And so I had a meeting, and had about 30 or 40 people show up, I guess, at the meeting. And so we talked about it, and would they help me? And I said yes. So anyway, I decided I'd run for the county board of supervisors. So I ran and won. I served 4 years there on the board, and a very controversial board at the time. And the county was really in bad straits because of the school systems wasn't as strong as it should be because we were growing so fast. Prince William just exploded.
Yes.
And so. Anyway, that's in that area. That's really basically how I got started and how I got into politics.
And you came there to manage the airport. Let's
Yes.
go back a little bit even earlier, because you had a time serving toward the end of World War II, and planes were part of your passion and interest even back at that time.
When I was a little kid, just as long back, as far back as I can remember, 4 or 5 years old, if an airplane flew over our house, or wherever I saw them, I said, "Hey, come out, give me a ride! Come out, give me a ride!" and
Yes.
that I just had a passion for airplanes, as you said, and I decided that I was going to enlist in the United States Army Air Corps as soon as I was old enough. But now this was in 1944, and so what I did, I joined the United States Army Air Corps Reserve, and I was at age 17. So when I was 18, I was called into active duty. So by the time I was 18, I'd finished high school, and then went into active duty in the service as an aviation cadet. And this was in 1940. Joined the reserve in 44, but didn't go into active duty until 1945. And so I served from February of 45 until the Japanese surrendered in that year. So actually I served only about 8 or 9 months of active duty. Then from that point on, immediately went from that point, I was in Amarillo, Texas, working on learning to work on B-29s. And so I went from that air base in Texas, went to Naples, Italy, and served a year over there, and got into aircraft maintenance, and decided I was going to be a pilot. But I really enjoyed the aircraft maintenance, and I thought it was a great job and a great career. I came back and always thought about the possibility of staying in the service, but instead of doing that, I didn't. I went to school, a night school, and got my aircraft and engine mechanics license. I got a job working for Capital Airlines in the maintenance department. Then shortly after that, I got a job. I started my commercial pilot's license, and after that, I got a job working as a pilot and director of maintenance for a company out in Cleveland, Ohio. So my wife and I and our kids, I only had 2 kids at that time, flew out and lived in Ohio, Gainesville, Ohio. I beg your pardon, Painesville, Ohio. We lived there 6 years, but that was the real beginning of it. And then I got into the aviation business here in the local area, and so that's somewhat.
That got you started, and Colgan Air came later. And
Well, what happened? The company I said I was the airport manager. Or technically, I was, but I also worked for an employer. Had the company that owned the business. What happened? The boss got in trouble. The owner got in trouble, and he had to shut it down. And when he did, he asked me to come into his office to talk to him about it. And he said, maybe we can work out some kind of future for you, even though we're in bankruptcy. And so I went in to talk to him and the receiver, and he said, why don't you buy this company out of receivership? I said, well, how much do you want for it? They said, how about $200,000? I said, oh man, where would I ever get that kind of money? I got $1,500 to bank. I said, I can't. So what happened then? They cut it down to 100. I said, and then my former boss said, you can raise that money. And you can raise $100,000 to buy this company out of receivership. I didn't share his enthusiasm, and I didn't think it'd be that easy. But you know what? I went home that night, and I couldn't sleep. I was trying to put together a list of people I could call to ask for if they'd be interested in investing in my new company. And so that morning I had 7 names, including mine, six and me. And I only had $1,500, but I began making calls. You know what? Within 30 minutes, I had $40,000. I couldn't believe it, how easy that was. I'd call someone I knew very well, and knew this person was interested in aviation, and call them up and say, hey, would you like to join my new company? I'd give them a brief summary of it. And in every case, every one of them said yes. And it all went by what they could afford to do. One guy put in $18,000. One guy put in 10, and had a couple put in $2,500, and one guy only put in $500, and I had my $1,500. So then we had to meet with the city of Manassas, and get them to agree to transfer this lease to us, this new company which we put together. and I had a meeting with the city council, and sure enough, they said to me, what are you going to call this company? I said, well, I think I'm going to call it Old Dominion Aviation, after the Old Dominion state of Virginia. And well, what happened? They laughed at me, and I went out and said, why don't you step out in the hall, you and your friends? I had my stockholders with me. We stepped out in the hall, and then I went back in, and they said, well, here's what we'll do. We'll approve you as the new lessee of the airport, under one condition. It has to have Colgan in the name and the title. What are you going to call it? I said, I'll call it Old Dominion. I said, no, not Old Dominion. Well, you can call it Colgan Aviation, or you can call it Colgan Airways, or whatever, but it has to have Colgan. Because I said, why? They said, because General Motors requires the dealer's name be put on the building, on the dealership. Your name goes on the building, or we don't do it. Because if your name isn't on the building, you can take off another month and you're gone someplace or somebody else. He said, but if you put your name in the building, you're going to stay. Well, my name's been on the building ever since. So.
And you stayed. Yes.
Yep.
Well, now, going back then to politics, beyond the time that you served on the Prince William Board of Supervisors and even chaired the board,
Right.
What then caused you to think about running for the Senate of Virginia?
Okay, this was really during the Watergate era, and politicians have not a great name today, but really bad in those days.
Certainly did.
Being in politics was nothing to brag about. And so I had a couple of young guys come to see me one Sunday evening. Said, we'd like you to run for state senator. I said, you got a good state senator. I said, no, he's going to lose. He's going to lose. And he's already got an opponent, and he's going to lose. We'd like to have you run. So after talking to my wife about it, I decided I'd run for the state senate. And I ran and won. And so at the beginning of I was 1976, I took office, and I've been there ever since, for 40 years.
And if my memory's correct, it wasn't even a close election. You won by over 60% of the vote.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
in that first time.
Yeah.
Now, Senator Colgan, you've been considered a moderate. How did you run as a Democrat? Was most everyone running as a Democrat back at that time?
Back in those days, there was a political animal called the bird machine, the bird Democrats.
Yes.
And the bird Democrat was really a very conservative someone. That's about the time I came into it. I wasn't part of the bird folks, but that's how that got started, and so.
You know, one of the themes of your campaign has been honor in politics. And we may even have a picture that go up on the screen that would show you in some boxing gloves with the music of Rocky. We won't be playing the music, but the people who know it can be kind of humming to themselves as they would see that picture of you.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the Watergate era and all. How did you decide to have as your theme in your campaign honor in politics?
Honor in politics as my theme? I think that I just felt that if you're going to do this, you have to vote your convictions. It's not that I'm a moderate. I try not to. I guess I'm a moderate, but also I'm very liberal in some things and very conservative in other areas.
Yes.
And so I just tried to do what I thought was right. And each time I had a tough decision. A couple of years ago, the Republicans passed a budget, and the Democrats wouldn't accept it. And I was one of the Democrats, and the session was scheduled to be, I think, 60 days long, and we'd been in session now for 90 days, and it stretched it out, and we simply couldn't come together on the budget. I know if we didn't get together on the budget, we're going to be in a fix. If we get a bad reputation in the financial market, our name would be mud, and so I said, well, I'm going to change my vote. And so I waited. We took one more vote. The Democrats said, "Wait, let us have one more vote, and then you can switch if we don't agree." I said, "Okay." So anyway, I went up. Just the next day, I stood up on the floor and said I want to change my vote from yesterday, and so I went through the procedure of doing that, and and came out of there with a budget. And it's only one Democrat voted for the budget. That was me. That, it takes some courage to do that. I did it, but it takes some courage to do that because it's not an easy thing to do, to go against your friends who supported me all these years. The Democrats did, but all good to me. But I was getting a lot of letters from other county supervisors and other parts of the state, and telephone calls. Change your vote. Get us a budget. We had to have a budget. So I just tried to put that first.
I looked back and reread the speech that you gave that day on the floor, and I was really struck by the speech, and particularly by the last sentence when you said you won't build it by tearing it down.
That's right.
And talking about the need to have the budget.
Yes,
and
yes.
So that, I don't know if that was one of your longer speeches on the floor of the Senate, but that
Well,
certainly
it was one of my. I don't speak too often on the floor. It was probably an average speech for me, I guess. But
now over the years you have served with 11 governors, 5 Republicans, 6 Democrats, without going one by one. What are some of your reflections on some of those governors that you served with?
Well, Mills Godwin was governor when I was elected to state senate. So, and I had known him from the aviation business. He was a great aviation enthusiast, and he'd been to Manassas Airport a few times, and I was very good friends with the director of aviation for the state, and so I think that Mills Godwin had to be one of my favorites. But I'll come on, but they're all pretty good. I've been impressed with them. I think that Doug Wilder is very good governor. I think that Mark Warner is excellent. I thought Tim Kaine was as well, and George Allen. There's Republicans and Democrats there. So and getting to know them, and Jim Gilmore, he put together the legislation, which would hopefully abolish the car tax. Well, I started that crusade a few years ahead.
I remember that, yes, sir.
Before that, but I couldn't get it through. So then when Mr. Gilmore became governor, he took that up during his campaign. He said, no car tax, no car tax. He's going to abolish the car tax. Well, he didn't quite abolish it, but he got 70% of it. And so that was a big help, I think, to a lot of people over the years that have that personal property tax on cars, get it down. I hope eventually we can wipe it out. I'm not going to be there to do that, but I hope that someone can just wipe it all together. It's an aggravating tax.
When I tried to add up the number of senators you served with, I didn't get to the final tally, but it's got to be a few hundred over that time, even though it's 40 members of the chamber.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that are most memorable, comments that you'd make, Ed Willie, Hunter Andrews.
I have to say Ed Willie was an unusual man. He reminded me of a Navy admiral. He was as straight as an arrow, and he had snow white hair. And I never saw a man that had the power he had. He had tremendous power. If Ed Willie voted, if you wanted to get your bill passed, you better clear with Ed Willie, because you took it, showed it to him. He'd say, "This is this piece of trash. It was a piece of trash." If he said, "That's pretty good. You can vote for that." So everybody followed his lead. It was just amazing. I thought Hunter Andrews was an excellent governor, excellent senator. Hunter was really more vocal than Ed, but he was also a little more compassionate than Ed, because Ed wasn't too compassionate from time to time. But Hunter was an excellent senator. And I thought that John Chichester, I'd put him in that same category. John was a very good legislator. He did a great job. As a matter of fact, he was awarded. I happen to know this guy was present. He was awarded a national medal for his excellence in politics. And I thought that was a great thing that he did. There's many others. Wiley Mitchell was a very good governor, a very good senator. And going on down the list, after Wiley, I guess I'd say Clive Duval. Clive Duval sounded maybe the opposite of those. He was very liberal, where Ed Willie was very conservative. And so this was a cross-section of good people, regardless of whether Democrats, Republicans, what they are. They're good, decent people. And I don't think that I think politics today is changed somewhat, but it's still, I think you still got a lot of really good people involved, and I think that at the state level is a very good place to start. If you can't, maybe start at the county board like I did, or as a city councilman or school board, whoever, and then stretch it into. If you do pretty good, you like it, then you can continue on and move up the ladder. So.
Yeah, you've served for years on the Senate Finance Committee, among other committees. You've been chair of the committee. You've been co-chair of the committee.
Yeah.
You've seen changes in that process, but not just in Senate Finance. As you reflect on some of the changes that you've seen over the years, going back from 1976 to now, what would almost immediately come to mind as some of the differences nowadays?
Well, the difference is I think that Mills Godwin, I'll go back to Mills Godwin. I mentioned it in the speech I gave. Mills Godwin, think what he did. He established the community college system in Virginia.
Yes.
To do that, he had to have money. So he had a bill introduced which would give Virginia a 4% sales tax. That's a new tax, 4% sales tax. And so I thought that Godwin had a lot of courage to do that, and it passed. He got it through and signed it, and Virginia, of course, became a sales tax state. But we also became a community college state, building a very fine community college system in Virginia, and it really is it's just an ideal type of education, I think, for young people who can't afford to go to college, and they can go to community college.
You know, you've been really a big proponent of public education,
Yeah.
and back in one of those times when the budget was being cut, you really are credited for protecting public education from some major cuts just a few years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And veterans issues, those have been really important to you, particularly for those disabled veterans.
Yep.
I think that you were the one who patroned the bill to allow localities to waive the property tax for veterans.
That's right. Yes, I did, and I think the veterans, being a veteran myself, I think that we owe veterans a lot. I once heard a general giving a speech, and he said, our veterans represent the royalty, American royalty. That's who they really are. They're our royalty, our veterans. I thought it was a great comment he made, and I would have to agree with that. I think that the veterans are just I think they're wonderful, really. I spend as much time as I can. But my son was a veteran in Vietnam, and is still today not doing very well. He contracted Agent Orange over in Vietnam, and I had a brother who was in Korea, and I had a brother who was in the Navy. He was in the Navy when I was in the Army Air Corps, and my dad was in World War I, and so I think that with all those family members, as well as a lot of friends who are veterans, I think that sort of puts a spotlight on them.
You had some encouraging words for people who might want to go into elective office just a minute ago. What other words would you have in closing for those who will be serving after you in the Senate? What are some of the big challenges that need to be addressed?
I think that you have to vote your convictions. I think that's, and I'll tell you what, one thing I always did when I was campaigning, I would tell it exactly as it is. And I would just say, I hope that you agree with me, but if you don't, that's okay. And so I think that would be the thing I would say to them, really more than anything else, to just vote your conviction, be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. And I thought that my opponent in my first race, he was a good friend of Henry House. And I was not. I liked Henry a lot, but Henry had a very colorful character. But he and I were opposites as far as philosophy is concerned. Harry was very liberal. I mean, Henry was very liberal. I was quite conservative compared to him. So I just think it's important that you stick to your conviction, stick to your guns, And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do it, because you're going to do something that's going to turn some people off or make people mad, but you have to do what's right.
Senator Colgan, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond, and thank you for your years of service.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. You're a great guy yourself. You know you are. Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.